Jamal, don't worry. He's a 70-year-old old man. He won't be able to do anything. Sarah laughed loudly as she said this, while Jamal looked at her with fury in his eyes. Do you really think he's capable of anything? Come on, she mocked again. Jamal's anger was boiling inside, but he still asked bitterly, so in the end, you're really going to marry him and become his wife? That's something I can't tolerate. I love you. I wanted to marry you. And now you're leaving me for an old man? Sarah responded with an air of overconfidence. I told you he's too old. He's not capable of anything. Do you really think he could take your place in my life? Trust me, within 2 or 3 months of marriage, he'll be gone from this world. And then I'll take over all his wealth and come back to you. We'll get married and live the life we always dreamed of. Sarah was dreaming with her eyes wide open. She had always longed for wealth, a luxurious home, a fancy car, and the most expensive jewelry, things she knew Jamal could never give her. Yes, she did love Jamal deeply, but she was also well aware of the hard truth. Jamal had a very modest job and would never be able to provide her the luxury she craved. That's why she had trapped her 70-year-old boss in a web of fake affection and convinced him to marry her. Now that Jamal had found out about all this, he was beyond furious. It was unbearable for him to even hear Sarah speak someone else's name, let alone talk about marrying another man. Sarah kept trying to calm him down. His hands and feet tremble from old age. If he sits for a while, his back gets stiff. How could a man like that even dream of sharing a physical relationship with me? Jamal, being a man of principle and not greedy by nature, still couldn't digest what she was doing. But Sarah swore on her love and begged him, insisting that it was just a matter of a few months. After that, she would return to Jamal. Hearing this, Jamal reluctantly gave in, but firmly said, if you ever have any kind of relationship with that old man, any at all, then you and I are over. I won't tolerate my wife being near any man but me. Sarah replied, don't worry. He won't even try anything. But to reassure you, I'll mix sleeping pills in his milk every night. Satisfied now? She grabbed Jamal's hand with a smile, and he forced a smile back. He couldn't afford to lose Sarah at any cost. They had been in love for years, and he knew how important money was to her. Maybe that's why he gave in, because deep down, he also knew that no matter how hard he worked his whole life, he'd never be able to give Sarah the luxurious life she longed for. 2 days later, Sarah brought up the marriage proposal to her boss, Qasim. Within a week, the wedding was arranged. Sarah became the wife of Mr. Qasim and moved into the huge bungalow she had always dreamed about. And now, sitting on her wedding night in that very mansion, she looked around the lavish bedroom with her wide, excited eyes. It was filled with luxurious furniture and everything one could imagine. For Sarah, this room was like paradise. But what she didn't know was that this paradise would soon turn into a living hell. She had barely spent a few minutes sitting on the bed when the door creaked open and Mr. Kazim walked in. The moment Sarah saw his face, she smiled. He was a fragile old man, barely able to take firm steps. How could someone like him possibly do anything to her? Sarah had already mixed sleeping pills into the glass of milk just as she had planned. Sarah had entered the room with a complete plan in mind, just one glass of milk laced with sleeping pills, and her old husband, Qasim, would be fast asleep. That was the plan. She sat gracefully on the bed, waiting. Soon, Mr. Qasim entered the room, walking slowly, his steps deliberate and heavy. As he came closer and sat beside her, he handed her a wedding night gift, a necklace so expensive that Sarah's face lit up with a radiant smile. Her fate had truly changed overnight. She couldn't help but think of Jamal. Even if Jamal had worked his whole life, he could never have given her something like this. Her eyes sparkled with admiration as she looked at the necklace. But then, Mr. Qasim took the necklace in his hands and softly said, "Let me put it on you myself." Sarah felt a bit uneasy but remained silent. He placed the necklace around her neck, and in the very next moment, he pulled at the strings of her blouse. She was instantly startled, but Qasim just smiled and leaned closer, whispering, "You're incredibly beautiful. Your youth is something else entirely." "Do you know why I married you?" he asked, leaning even closer. Sarah, now visibly nervous, shook her head in denial. "It's because you have something special, something no one else does. I'm surrounded by young women every day, but what you offer, no one else can." As he said this, he peered down into the low-cut neckline of her dress. Sarah's breath caught in her chest. He then removed her bridal veil and tossed it aside. Sarah, now flustered, quickly said, "Why don't you drink your milk first? We can talk later." She handed him the glass of milk, but Kasim laughed and replied, "Why would I need milk? I'm a very strong man. You can set it aside." He gently pushed the glass away and began playing with her hair. Sarah was now feeling both embarrassed and uncomfortable. The blouse she wore with her bridal lehenga was small and revealing, exposing much more than she was prepared for. The deep neckline showed off her youth and beauty in a way that left her vulnerable. Even when she tried to cover herself, she couldn't hide it completely. She had expected her elderly husband to drink the milk and fall asleep right away, but Kasim was full of surprising energy and sat confidently close to her. Then he took her hand, brought it to his lips, kissed it gently, and said, "It feels like I've been given a new life today. Tonight, my greatest wish is about to come true." With those words, he leaned forward and kissed her neck. A jolt ran through her body like electricity. Alarmed, Sarah stood up from the bed, trembling. The heat of his lips had sent shivers down her spine. I'm really tired," she stammered. "It's been a long day." Kasim looked at her with a smile and gently pulled her back down beside him. "Tired already? The night has just begun. Even at this age, I don't tire easily. And you've already worn out?" He chuckled. "We still have many games to play tonight. It will be a night full of pleasure." His hands, though aged and trembling, gripped her arm so tightly that Sarah felt like she was being held by a man in his 20s. When she winced in pain and gasped, Kasim finally let go, but the red marks from his fingers remained imprinted on her skin. "You're quite the delicate flower," he sneered. "I thought you'd be smarter than this. You should have come to me willingly. But it seems I'll have to teach you how to behave." He laughed so hard at his own comment that he started coughing uncontrollably. Sarah, seizing the moment, moved a bit away from him. Panic was rising in her chest. She didn't know how to escape. Jamal had clearly instructed her, "Call me as soon as he falls asleep. If you don't, I'll call you myself. And if you get even close to him, I'll never forgive you." And here Kasim sat, eyes burning with desire, staring at her like a predator eyeing his prey. "Please, drink your milk," she said again, her voice trembling. But Kasim laughed once more and shook his head. "No need." Kasim pushed Sarah onto the bed and said with a sly grin, "My love, tonight I don't want to eat or drink anything. And if you're so eager to feed me milk, then give me the real thing, not this diluted one." He burst out laughing so suddenly that Sarah froze in shock. His warm breath struck her face, making her even more uneasy. "Mr. Kasim, I need to use the bathroom," she stammered, trying to find a new excuse. "This outfit is too heavy, and the jewelry is suffocating me. If you don't mind, I'd like to change." To her surprise, Kasim let go of her. She quickly got up and walked toward the bathroom, but he followed her to the door. She turned around, shocked, only to see him push the door open and step inside. "I'm your husband," he said casually. "What's there to be shy about? Come in, there's a wardrobe here. I'll pick out a nightdress for you myself." He moved a mirror aside to reveal a small hidden wardrobe inside the bathroom, full of strange, flashy nightdresses. "Look at all these. Ordered just for you. Wear this red one, you'll look stunning," he said as he handed her a tiny, revealing red nightie. Sarah's face flushed with embarrassment. Holding the piece of clothing in her hand, she could hardly believe what was happening. "How can I wear this?" she muttered, completely unsure of how to respond. This was nothing like what she had expected from an old man. She hadn't imagined he'd be so lustful, or that he'd go to such lengths to stock these vulgar clothes just for her. She tried to protest, to make excuses, but Kasim, without hesitation, reached out and tugged at her blouse himself. She instinctively crossed her arms to cover herself. "Don't be so shy," he said with a grin. "Just put it on." Cornered, humiliated, and with no other way out, she quickly changed into the revealing nightie and removed her jewelry. Then, deeply uncomfortable, she walked back into the bedroom with him. Kasim didn't leave her side for even a second. As soon as they entered the room, he grabbed her again and laid her back down on the bed. "Mr. Kasim, I'm very tired. May I just rest for a while?" she pleaded, desperately trying to delay what she feared was coming. She didn't know how to escape this man. She couldn't outright disrespect him, nor could she offer him what he was asking for. That right belonged to Jamal, only Jamal. She didn't love Kasim. She had never even planned to be close to him. But Kasim moved in again, leaning close to her ear and whispering, "Sarah, I may be old, but I'm still very much a man. Don't expect any gentleness from me. I will take what is mine. I married you because I need something desperately." He continued, "After my wife passed away, I was left completely alone. I have one daughter, and besides her, no one. I'm not just alone. I'm emotionally broken. How could I live my life like this all by myself? That's why I married you, so I could fill the void I've been suffering in for years." Hearing these words sent a chill down Sarah's spine. Deep down, she understood exactly what he meant, and that terrified her even more. Then Kasim picked up the glass of milk and forcefully brought it to her lips. "You'll need a lot of strength tonight. Drink this." As soon as she finished the glass, Kasim pushed her back onto the bed and lay beside her. He began caressing her face with his hands, and shortly afterward, he crossed every line of cruelty and decency. When Sarah regained consciousness, she was lying on a hospital bed. Jamal stood right in front of her, his face full of concern. Sarah stared at him blankly, her eyes hollow and confused. She didn't know where she was or why. She couldn't remember what had happened to her. When Jamal saw her waking up, he gently stroked her head and softly asked, "Are you okay?" Sarah nodded slightly and asked in a weak voice, "Why am I in the hospital? And how did you get here?" "I got married to Kasim and went to his house, didn't I?" She was confused, struggling to understand what had happened. Her mind was racing. Jamal took a deep breath and replied, "You're not well. You need to rest. You've been unconscious for 2 whole days. Once you're better, I'll explain everything to you in detail." Sarah placed her hand on her lower back and groaned, "I'm in so much pain." Seeing her discomfort, Jamal called for the nurse. The nurse quickly arrived and gave Sarah an injection in her arm. Within minutes, the medicine began to take effect, and she fell back into a deep sleep. The next time she woke up, she felt slightly better. Slowly, she sat up in bed, still aching all over. The room was quiet. She was alone except for a nurse standing beside her. "What happened to me?" she asked. "How did I end up here?" The nurse looked at her for a moment, then spoke in a low voice. "You married an old man, right? That's why you're here. That man, he wasn't human. He was a monster. What he did to you on your wedding night was beyond cruel." The nurse went quiet, her eyes filled with pity. Sarah waited for her to say more, but the nurse remained silent. So Sarah asked, "What exactly happened to me? Where is Mr. Kasim? Did he do something terrible?" Before the nurse could respond, Jamal entered the room. His face was tight with anger. He raised his voice. "Nurse, please step outside. The doctor is calling you." The nurse quickly left. Jamal walked over to Sarah's side and sat down. "Jamal, tell me what happened," she pleaded. "Why am I here?" Jamal looked away for a moment, then said firmly, "That man was not worthy of you. You married him out of greed, but he turned out to be worse than an animal. Don't ask too many questions right now. You've been discharged. We're taking you home. Your mother is terribly worried." He paused, then added, "Your obsession with money dragged you into a nightmare. Just thank God you survived." Hearing those words made Sarah even more distressed, but Jamal refused to say anything more. He helped her out of the hospital and took her home. As soon as Sarah's mother saw her, she broke into tears and rushed to hug her daughter tightly. Just days ago, she had dressed her daughter as a bride and watched her leave with joy. Now she stood in front of her looking fragile, pale, and broken. Through sobs, her mother said, "I told you not to marry that old man. What did Jamal lack? Why did you leave him for a man like that? Look at what he's done to you." Sarah, overwhelmed and angry, finally snapped, "Ami, just tell me what happened. You and Jamal just cry and stay silent. What happened that night? What did he do to me?" Her mother's voice broke as she answered, "He ruined your life, Sarah. He stole the most precious thing you had. He didn't just randomly marry you, he planned everything." Sarah looked at her mother, stunned. "Do you remember," her mother continued, "a couple of months ago when your office had medical testing done for everyone? They even sent you to the hospital for additional tests." Sarah's eyes widened. She remembered clearly. 2 months earlier, under Qasim's specific orders, medical tests were conducted for all employees, especially the female ones. "There were 30 employees in your office," her mother went on. 16 of them were women, and all 16 had full tests done. Your reports came out better than anyone else's. That's why he chose you." Tears streamed down her mother's face as she said, "You didn't trap him, Sarah. He trapped you. He needed something from you, and he chose you because of those test results." The weight of those words hit Sarah like a thunderbolt. Her knees buckled. She remembered the day 4 months ago when she had first walked into that office for her job interview. It had been a small export business, run mostly by Mr. Qasim, with only a few staff members. But even then, something had felt strange. And now she couldn't help but wonder, what exactly were they exporting? Sarah never really knew what kind of business Mr. Qasim was actually running. In the office, there was only some basic work done on computers, and her main job was just to manage files. She had been completely mesmerized by Mr. Qasim's wealth. That's why she never saw anything wrong in him, nor did she ever question what kind of work was actually happening in the office. All she thought was, if she could trap this rich old man into marrying her, her life would become easy. On the other hand, Mr. Qasim had sized her up during the interview. He knew from the start that Sarah was greedy by nature, and he also knew that he could get her using his money. Sarah thought she was trapping Qasim, but in reality it was Qasim who had set the trap. He deliberately drew her closer. He would call her into his office for no reason, showered her with expensive gifts, took her to fancy restaurants and hotels. Eventually, Sarah herself proposed marriage. She never imagined this marriage would lead to her ruin. Mr. Qasim's wife had passed away many years ago. He had only one daughter, Zarina, who was married and lived with her husband. And so, Zarina needed a donor. Qasim lived alone and was the owner of property worth millions. That was what caught Sarah's eye and made her agree to marry him. But what she didn't know was that Qasim only agreed to marry her after receiving her medical test results. He had found out that Sarah was in perfect reproductive health, and she was the one woman who could serve his purpose. You see, Qasim's only daughter, Zarina, had been married for several years but had never been able to conceive. She tried every possible treatment, but nothing worked. Eventually, doctors overseas diagnosed her with a condition that meant she could never get pregnant, unless her uterus was replaced. Zarina was desperate to have a child. Her husband refused to adopt, and so Zarina needed a donor. She needed a girl who could give her a womb. Qasim called in an elite team of foreign doctors. Sarah's test results were sent to them, and they confirmed that Sarah was the perfect match. Her womb could be transplanted into Zarina. So Qasim didn't marry her out of love. He married her for her body. On the wedding night, just like Sarah had planned to do to him, Qasim drugged her milk and made her unconscious. Then, a secret surgical operation was performed. Her uterus was removed. Qasim had connections abroad. Within hours, the entire operation was completed, and he flew overseas. No one knew exactly where Zarina lived or where Qasim had gone. Before leaving, he transferred the agreed dowry amount to Sarah's bank account and left behind divorce papers. But Sarah had lost the most important thing in her life. She could never become a mother again. Her body was now incomplete. That was the truth Jamal had been hesitant to tell her. Qasim may not have taken her dignity in the way she feared, but he had stolen something far more precious from her body. Sarah's mother was devastated with guilt. "Why didn't I stop her?" she cried. But Sarah's condition spoke even louder. Her entire being had collapsed under the weight of her own mistake. Despite everything that had happened, Jamal, a kind, noble man, did not abandon her.